Welcome students to lecture number 6. In this lecture I am going to talk on UPS user segment. Already we had discussed about the GPS system, in which we have found that there is a segment called user segment, and that user segment consists of a GPS receiver and its software. But we need to know more about this user segment, because this is the most important part for user to use GPS system. And now in the last class I have already discussed that GPS receiver receives GPS signal from GPS satellites, and the signal contains a plethora of information in terms of code, carrier and data, and different types of code, carrier and data is also available. Now we need to know more about GPS user segment to understand that we need not make use of all the parts of the GPS signal, only a small part of the GPS signal may be used for particular use. Now to make use of that, we need to know how about the GPS user segment more. So we need to know more detail about the GPS receiver and then GPS software, which are the two components of GPS user segment. So already I told you that using GPS receiver we do receive the GPS signal from GPS satellite vehicles, and GPS satellite vehicle broadcast GPS signal which are in L band GPS signal, and this signal we as a user this is the GPS receiver, and with this softwares are available. So this is our user segment. So GPS receiver hardware, this is a hardware or electronic instrument, make use of some software to receive this GPS signal, and this GPS signal actually has many components, and part of these components we will be making use for our use. Now we need to know how to make use of these components by using different types of receiver or different types of software, and that is what I am going to tell in this class. So in some other class I have already told that GPS receiver is nothing but a hardware, electronic hardware. Actually it will consist of three parts. Already I told you that one is called controller, and then antenna, and actual GPS hardware, GPS receiver hardware. So these are the three parts which constitutes the GPS receiver. Now this receiver hardware, depending upon which part of the signal this GPS receiver hardware can decipher, on the basis of that the type of GPS receiver depends. So the GPS receiver, type of GPS receiver depends on which part or component of GPS signal it can decipher. Now which part or component by this I wanted to tell you, the part of carrier or code or both, because as I told you in the last class that the data that is available in GPS signal is the most important part and that we need to know, we have to decipher, but to get that data we need to first decipher either code or carrier and code both. Now one more thing has to be emphasized, that whatever is the type of GPS receiver, it will always decipher the CA code. That means this is the minimum each GPS receiver should be able to decipher. Now depending on whether a receiver will be able to decipher the code or code and carrier both, it is classified into two types. One is called code receiver. This type of receivers can decipher only the code part of the GPS signal, and the other type is carrier receiver, also called geodetic receiver, which deciphers the CA code plus any other frequency, L1 or L2 or L2, L3, whatever it is. Now depending upon how many what are the codes it can decipher, it may be single code. Now for single code receiver, it is the CA code that it has to decipher. As I told you, all GPS receiver must be able to decipher the CA code. So single code GPS receiver means it will decipher the CA code, that means, and from in the CA code it will have the LNAV data. So we will get the data of LNAV format from code receiver and the time from CA code. It may be dual code. So dual code, in case of dual code at least it is CA and it may be any other, maybe CM, CL or many others. So and there may be multi code. So CA and this. So depending upon which part of the how many codes or which codes it will be able to decipher other than CA code, it will be dual code and multi code. The code receiver provides less accurate positioning, also timing is not that much accurate. So position and time which the code receiver provides are less accurate, and these type of receivers are used for, if it is a single code, for navigational purpose, and for dual code it is the mapping purpose and like that. But the position and time that we will get from code receivers are of less accurate. Other than the code receiver, another type of receiver that is available is the carrier receiver or geodetic receiver, which provides us the position and time by deciphering the carrier phase. As a result, we get very precise position and time we can get from carrier receiver or geodetic receiver. Now depending upon how many carrier frequency it can decipher, it may be single frequency or dual frequency or triple frequency. So you can see that L1, so L1 contains CA code, L2C and L1 and L2C, L1 and L2C and L5. So depending upon which carrier frequency or what are the carrier frequency it can decipher, on the basis of that we can say single frequency, dual frequency and triple frequency. Now as I told you that L1 frequency is good for positioning, but if we have L1 and L2C both, that means dual frequency, it will be not only give the good position, also this type of receiver will be useful to walk under canopy, and many other errors can be minimized by using dual frequency, and triple frequency will be still robust and we can make use of triple frequency for very precise like deformation, crustal movement, like that very precise walk. So depending upon the capability of deciphering the part of the signal, we will be able to say which receiver has what type of capability, and depending upon that we can go for decision which type of receiver we should use for particular purpose. Now this GPS receiver actually makes use of different types of software to arrive at our applications or use. So we need to know more about the GPS software and different types of software, how they work, what they work. So now I will be discussing on GPS software. Now GPS softwares are used to operate the GPS receiver, to collect data using GPS receiver and to process GPS observation. Now there are two fundamental types of GPS software. One is called field software. For the name itself you can understand that the software which are being used in the field along with the GPS receiver, those are field software, and the softwares which are being used in office for further work with the GPS data, then it is called office software. Now again there are different types of field softwares are there, and the software which is used to operate the hardware part of the GPS receiver is called firmware. Then we have the actually GPS receiver is also connected to some pump top computer. So to operate the pump top computer you need the operating system software, then you will have the controller software, as GPS receiver also contains a controller to control the different functions. So you need to have a controller software, and the GPS receiver also contains the real time software which will provide the real time position or which will process the data in real time to do different applications. Now as I told you, farmers are the software which basically used to operate and control the receiver hardware, and most of the works that the firmware done are on default setup. Then this firmware works within a operating system software, and this operating system software operates and controls the field computer that is attached with the controller system, and generally Windows mobile operating systems are being widely used for GPS controller computer associated with the GPS controller. Then one domain specific software which is called controller software is available within the controller. These software operates and control the hardware receiver, and by using the controller software we really go for many field works of GPS receiver during data collection and many other works. So the fundamental difference between the controller software, actually operating system software, it is the general, it works in general like file opening, file closing or like that, giving the name of the files like that. What we generally do within different our use software, but controller software actually will be used for some particular function associated with the GPS data collection, like if we want to know or want to give the cutoff angle, or we want to give the height of the instruments, like that. It is the domain specific information, or controller software works for domain specific works during the GPS field data collection. And once the data is being received by the GPS receiver, that data will be processed in real time by the real time software that will be available inside the GPS receiver hardware. So GPS, these field softwares are basically, it is available within the GPS receiver. Now once data has been collected, the data generally gets transferred to Office software. So there will be some input output module between this, or and then the data will be processed using the Office software. Now Office software also are of three types. One is called post processing software. Before that, interfacing software, as I told you, input output, interfacing software, then post processing software, and then application software. Now this interfacing software actually it make use, it provides the interface between the GPS receiver hardware and Office computer. So the interface between the GPS receiver and the Office computer, that is being provided by the interfacing software, and thus interfacing software is used to import, export the data from the GPS receiver to import to the Office software. once the data is available in the office computer, that post processing software available within the office computer will process it. Now there are basically two types of post processing software. One is commercial post processing software and other one is the scientific post processing software. Now this commercial post processing software, actually this type of software process the data of particular receiver. It is the receiver dependent, and the scientific software, post processing software are the software which are receiver independent. Now as we know that for any GPS observation we have to make use of receiver, and receiver will make use of its own particular format to store the data, and to use that data we have to make use of the particular commercial processing software that the particular format of the receiver demands, or we should convert the GPS receiver data format to RINEX format. Now what is RINEX format? It is the receiver independent exchange format. So any data means I may have 2-3 types of GPS receiver with which I have collected the data. All those data I can convert to, one can convert to RINEX format. So all data when it will be RINEX format, then we can import that data to scientific post processing software. So that is the idea of scientific post processing software. It can process data from different types of GPS receiver. Moreover, scientific softwares are very precise. It provides very accurate information, and it is also very difficult to do, and fortunately many of the scientific softwares are free of cost still now. So scientific software generally used for our scientific work or very precise work. Now here you can see post processing software process the data in office computer. 3 types of commercial software, scientific software, and one more. Oh, okay. So I have given application software, another type, which is also post processing type. Now commercial software compatible to process data collected by particular GPS receiver. As I told you that it is a receiver dependent software like GNSS solution, GeoOffice, like that. Scientific software process GPS data in many well defined formats, receiver independent software, and the idea behind is that all the data has to be converted to some standard format called RINEX format, and that RINEX format data will be imported to scientific post processing software, and we will process the data in scientific software. Another type of software which is prevalent particular to some particular application, in view of particular application, that is called particular software, application software. So this type of software, what it will do, it will import the data from our GPS receiver and it will process the data to some particular application. Like if we want to navigate in a very dense city, for navigation purpose. So what the receiver will do, it will capture the data from the satellite and then it will superimpose the data on the different routes available in the city and it will guide us to go to particular location along certain road. So all this will be on real time basis, and in doing that work, that some particular application software the receiver will use. Over and above this software, there is another software which is particularly important for GPS work, that is called planning software. We will study more about this in future. Now what is planning software? In the last in some other class I had told you that about the planning operation to be done for any GPS work. So during the planning operation or planning work, we have to make use of some particular GPS software which provides us the different information about the availability of the GPS satellites, their geometry and many other information. So that software is called planning software. So that is another type of software which we generally use for GPS surveying. With this I want to conclude today's main content of the class. Now let me summarize what we have discussed in this class. GPS user segment consists of two broad parts. One is the GPS receiver, another is the GPS software. Making use of GPS hardware, we collect GPS signal within which means, and these GPS signals we need not to make use whole of the GPS signal, only a part of the GPS signal we make use for our particular purpose. Depending upon which part of the GPS signal the particular GPS receiver can decipher, the quality of the receiver or the type of receiver depends. So on the basis of that there are basically two types. One is that code receiver which deciphers the code part of the GPS signal, another is the geodetic receiver or carrier frequency receiver which deciphers the carrier frequency along with the CA code, and the frequency receivers are much more precise in positioning as well as providing time than the code receivers, and these receivers gets operated through some software. Softwares are of two basic types. One is called field software, another is called office software. Field softwares are the softwares which are used by the GPS receiver while it will be used to walk in the field, and office softwares are used for processing the field data collected using the GPS receiver. Now office software is also of three types. One is called interfacing software which provides us the input output work, the post processing software which may be of commercial or scientific software, and the application software. So with this I like to conclude. Thank you.